Hello, I'm Dr. Amber Tackett from Paul G. Blazer High School, where I teach art for the Ashland Independent School District. And my presentation is on the creative problem solving in 3D. So, my problem of practice is that students often are hesitant in creative thinking. They are afraid to fail. They're afraid to try new things in a lot of cases. And so I was curious if implementing a more tactile um, and practical application, not just in art, because that is both tactile, but if I could show them that the skills that they acquire in my art class, creative thinking, uh, the process of making and problem based learning, that if that would help if I added a new technology to the mix with 3D printer. And so that's the problem I am trying to address with this project and with this grant. And so my research questions are, does the 3D printer help students become more engaged in the creative process? And secondly, do students exhibit creative problem solving skills through innovation of new products or solutions? And so through these two questions, I hope to see if adding the element of the 3D printer to my already existing process and creative skills teaching, if that will help students further grasp um, creative problem solving, and if they can also not be as hesitant or afraid to try new things and to be innovative, to be creative, to not be afraid to fail at coming up with solutions, because that's the only really good way to come up with good solutions, is through actually trying and trying again, much like any inventor has done in the past and in the present. So getting started, I am completely new to 3D printing. I have had no prior knowledge other than I know that other people in my district and even in my school have utilized it, and some of my students have, but I am completely new to it. So getting started has been a lot of trial and error. I did go ahead and buy the 3D printer, though I am waiting on the computer part of my grant. But luckily, the printer has some built-in features that allow you to do some test prints within it. And so I've done some test prints. I've been doing a lot of adjusting of the filaments and of the temperature to try to get a good print. And I've had many failed attempts. As I just said, sometimes you have to fail to keep trying. So I want my students to be able to have the same kind of mindset to be daring to try something new, to learn through making adjustments, through solving issues, through doing research. I've done a lot of research into YouTube videos, trying to find any information I can about how to adjust and make the printing process better. I've been doing a lot of research uh, of how to problem solve these certain issues, like under extrusion and proper bed temperature so it doesn't stick to the bed, and all of these things that I'm trying to do on the front end to make it a little easier for my students moving on with the process. So I've also done some research in addition to like just problem solving how to even do 3D printing with the specific 3D printer I bought, which is an Enter 3 Pro. I've also done some research on what the extant literature is saying about creative problem solving. And so I found two articles, one by Olger in 2018, which said problem-based learning has been shown to increase both creative and critical thinking in students. So in doing what I want to do, I've got to create some sort of problem, according to the research, that is not just, hey, design something cool in 3D that we can 3D print, but that I involve some sort of problem-based learning with that. And then I also find a Yule Durham article, also from 2018, that did a study with teachers, case studies with teachers who have implemented 3D printing in their classroom, because I was just curious what other teachers have said about implementing this technology in their class. And it's increased, according to the teachers, permanency, effective learning experiences, participation, which are all things that are key signs of engagement. And so I was hoping for that. So I hope to find the same in my own students. And that it has also had a significant effects on students' attention to the course, their interest in the course, improving their imagination, uh, increasing attendance, bringing materials, and developing activities by doing and experiencing. And so these are all great things that have come out of other teachers' experience with 3D printing. And so I'm also hoping to find similar with mine. And I already can tell you that just having the 3D printer sitting in my room and occasionally printing something, students are like, "Ooh, are you figuring it out? Are you getting it to work? Are you seeing what's happening? Are you have you figured it out? Are you when are we going to use it?" So that I have all this excitement that's kind of building around just the fact that I have the 3D printer sitting in my classroom. And so that brings me to the action plan, which is what am I going to do between now, so November and March. So I've already been starting playing with the 3D printer. I believe I've got it to a good setting that will be sustainable enough to make 3D models with my students. And so the next course of action is what I will be talking about next. And so the next thing is to start with creative problem solving without necessarily talking about the 3D printer or involving the 3D printer. And so I'll be talking soon about Leonardo da Vinci in my classes and how he was an inventor and how he did creative problem solving. And so I found on PBS's website this really great lesson plan on endangered species. And since that's a pertinent problem in our world, have students come up with creative solutions for a particular endangered species. And so on the lesson, it has a video that talks about specifically sea turtles. And so it kind of walks students through the process of creative thinking. And so then they will choose ultimately their own endangered species off the list and come up with a creative solution for the reason that particular species is endangered. So how can they problem solve and think creatively? And so I'll be walking them through the process of problem solving here pretty soon. And then after that, I'll need to introduce them to 3D design software. And so I've been looking at several different options, one of which is because most of my students will have access to Chromebooks. Actually, pretty much all of them have access to Chromebooks. I will use Tinkercad likely because it's a free online platform that then we can download and then use the laptop I am getting from the grant to use a slicer program to change it from the format that Tinkercad does it into the language that the printer runs it in. And so they'll be using that, and I'll teach them how to fix the types of files so that they can see how that process works, that sometimes you have to go from one type of file to another to do the 3D printing. And so I'm going to keep exploring other options, but this one is free and it is online based, which is really useful since students have Chromebooks and not necessarily laptops that we can download actual big scale programs to that are out there and available. So we'll be starting simple to begin with. So I'll teach them how to do that. They'll be doing various different projects with that. And then ultimately we'll do another creative problem solving lesson where they actually do a 3D model of their invention that can solve that particular problem that we addressed for that. So once we do that and we get the products, then I'll be doing the data analysis section. So I'll observe and do some field notes for how they're engaged with the problem, how they're engaged with the problem-based learning, how they are thinking creatively, Uh, I'll also do an analysis of their project, so the final product. So in their solutions, so whether that's on paper through brainstorming or whether that's through the actual final 3D model, I'll be analyzing their creative problem solving with those products and the process as well. And so that concludes this portion of my uh, presentation. And I really look forward to actually conducting this research and seeing what types of creative solutions my students come up with and see if they can get over that fear and hesitancy of taking risk and thinking creatively and not being afraid to fail and coming up with solutions just so they can keep and learn to persist through that failure and learn to uh, become creative and innovative thinkers, because it is a 21st century skill that many fields are looking for in future employers. And so hopefully come spring, you guys will see some really cool 3D printed products from my students.